Good afternoon. Whoa, that was loud today. Good afternoon, Rotarians.
Hi, Tim.
Welcome to the June 18th meeting of the Rotary Club Des Moines. I'm your president, Tim Lowitz.
For how much longer?
I didn't do the calculation, but it's this week, and then 3/4 of next week's meeting, and then Josh takes over. Thanks to Eric Dickinson for stepping in and greeting today. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. And then Bob Vedra will be up here in a moment to lead us in a moment of inspiration and the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test, and then we will greet our fellow Rotarians. So, Bob.
Thank you, President Tim. In 17 days, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the beginning of the foundation for our nation. Our founders stood in the breach for independence of the colonies against a king and nation who sought to subjugate said colonies and his people to tyranny and the will of that king. There are those over many years who sought to suppress democratic values and the voices of freedom. Those who sought to do so are heard for a while. Then they fade because citizens have used their voices and the right to vote to stand against such tyranny as our forefathers did 250 years ago. With that sacred document, they exhibited the leadership traits of purpose, fortitude, and mission. The last line of the Declaration of Independence is as follows. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Leadership, in my view, is a responsibility that is earned through dedicated work, failures, listening, and learning. There are those throughout the centuries who have demanded loyalty and fealty to their vision of the way things should be. Those leaders exist today. However, while they may lead because of position and title, they, through their actions and edicts, seek to create division, fear, demonize segments of our population. As citizens of this nation, we must learn from our history not to let those who seek to rewrite it for their own purposes and devices. There are cemeteries here and abroad that hold the bodies of our heroes who sacrificed for the freedom that we enjoy today and hopefully in the years ahead. They're sacred souls who Lincoln said at Gettysburg, they gave the last full measure of devotion. To us in the present and those of the future should commit with resolve to protect the values and virtues of our democracy. As Benjamin Franklin said in 1787 in response to a question, we have a republic if you can keep it. God bless America. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the four-way test.
Is the truth, is it fair to all concerned, will it build goodwill and better friendships, will it be beneficial to all concerned.
Please greet your fellow Rotarians.
Jordan? Good to see you, buddy.
Yep.
All right. As we return to our seats, I will get us started, as we usually do, by welcoming our guests. We do have several guests here with us today. So guests, when I call your name, and a number of them are seated at that table up there, please just stand and we'll hold our applause, unlike last week, if anyone was here. Hold our applause until the end and honor them as a group. So first we have Nick Hudson, an attorney with Conveyance Law, a prospective member and a guest of myself and the club. Skeet, I haven't had to use the sergeant at arms all year. Aaron Wagner, Chief Compliance Officer with American Equity, a prospective member and a guest of Marnie Hockenberg. We have Artist Kelly, founder and principal of Cornflower Studio. And Artist is a step ahead of everyone because she's already submitted her application for membership, so she's a guest of the club. And then Tyler Weber, summer intern at Community State Bank, an Iowa State student majoring in finance and marketing, and a guest of Kathy Adams. And then last but not least, Laura Sands, the wife and guest of our own Dave Busick. Thank you, guys. All right, where in the world is Club 27? For our guests, the Rotary Club of Des Moines is the 27th Rotary Club founded in the world, of over 46,000 clubs in 221 countries and territories worldwide. So, we have a couple submissions. First, Jamie, you don't need to groan. It's a nice picture. We have past President Jamie Boersma and her husband Dennis, who recently sailed the French and Italian Rivieras aboard the Wind Spirit, I think pictured down there in the lower right. And one of their stops was Portofino, Italy, photographed in the middle right there. So, thank you for sending that in, Jamie.
You are welcome.
And then, of course, we have past President Doug Saltzgaber. And he was with his pal Skeet Wooten in Guthrie Center. Guthrie Center is Doug and Kitty's hometown. And I would just say, if you go back to the previous picture, I was a little confused on which one was Portofino, Italy. Until I saw the sign. And I was like, okay. Cleared it up for me. Thank you for sending those in. If you're going somewhere fun, like Guthrie Center or Portofino, please take us with you and submit a picture. It is now my great pleasure to introduce a newer member from this last year, Skylar Mayberry Mays, and we've had lots of these recently, so it's great to see. So Skylar, why don't you come up and awkwardly stand next to me for a few minutes while we do our tradition of 5 questions. First of all, Skylar is the Executive Director of the Jacobson Institute at Grandview University and serves as Vice Chair on the Des Moines Public Schools Board. His work focuses on preparing, producing, and pivoting a future-ready workforce. Skylar completed his PhD in 2023 and has spent much of his career working at the intersection of business, education, and community relations. He is passionate about helping people and organizations grow, building strong community partnerships, and creating opportunities for future leaders. So, as we always do, we ask our 5 questions to new members. You've got a free day. What will we find you doing? Skylar says, probably a mix of good coffee, community, and learning. Skylar enjoys spending time with family and friends, exploring local restaurants and small businesses, attending community events, and finding time to write or work on new ideas. He also enjoys genealogy and family history research, learning more about the stories and connections that have shaped his family and communities over the generations. Number 2, where in the world have you traveled and can't wait to go back to? It's not Guthrie Center. Washington, D.C. stands out for Skylar. He says it's a place that really embodies a strong mix of young professionals, diversity, and highly educated communities, all within an environment shaped by public service. There's a constant energy that exists within that community, which makes it both intellectually and professionally compelling, and it is his favorite place to visit. How many times you've been to Washington, D.C.? Too many to count? Okay. 3, what was the best piece of advice you've ever been given? All money ain't good money. I like that. That's a good one. In other words, do not make decisions based only on compensation. The most meaningful work and time spent usually comes when the work aligns with his values and interests and the impact Skylar wants to make. Number 4, what talent or skill do you possess that might surprise or delight people? Skylar says he's very good at connecting people and ideas across different sectors. He genuinely enjoys bringing communities together to help create opportunities and partnerships that might not have happened otherwise. Skylar is also a strong qualitative researcher and enjoys listening to people's stories, identifying insights, and helping organizations better understand human experiences. And the 5th and final question. You are joining the Rotary Club Des Moines. What can't you wait to tell your friends and family about our organization? And Skylar, you get to answer that from the microphone. So.
Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Rotarians, for the invitation, and also for the vote for me to actually be able to join Rotary, because you could have voted no. That is very tough vote. Yeah. But to answer your question, what I'm probably most excited about in joining the Rotary Club, and I learned a lot of this throughout the process of becoming a member, but it was really around the impetus and the inception of how this organization was started and created, and that it extends well beyond just a social club. This organization has done work that's been meaningful in shaping our communities for dozens of years, and I'm excited to continue to magnify that voice and magnify that impact within our communities, particularly during a time when education is challenged. It's important that organizations like Rotary stand with and stand alongside those organizations, our students, our teachers, and it's evident even when I see it on the billboards recognizing Educators of the Year, to the scholarships and other resources that are given to our students. I hope to be part of that continued voice that magnifies what Rotary of Des Moines and Rotary International continue to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Skylar. Welcome, and it's great to have you in our club. Like you said, that vote is very contentious, I know. A lot of no votes. All right, last before we get our speaker up here, very good timing, Jordan. Took us all year to do this. Rotary Law and Disorder, this is the last one of the year. Because next week, I know. Josh said he might have me back once or twice to do a guest spot, but for those of you who don't know, Rotary Law and Disorder, because I am a local attorney, is my attempt to poke fun at my chosen profession. This is, I gotta recognize, this actually, to the fact that we're turning the podium over to Josh here next week, I got this idea from him actually. He sent me a text saying, hey, you should use this for Rotary Law and Disorder. So here goes, I'm going to. And it starts off a little gruesome, but don't worry, that's not the main point of this story. On July 27th, 1996, near Agency, Iowa, just east of Tacoma, Benjamin Schreiber murdered John Dale Terry with an axe handle with the help of his girlfriend. And the following year, Schreiber was convicted of first-degree murder at trial, with the jury deliberating for less than 2 hours. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And you all say, well, what the heck's interesting and funny about this? Well, in March of 2015, Schreiber was found unconscious at the Iowa State Penitentiary and transferred to the University of Iowa Hospitals in Iowa City. Schreiber had developed sepsis with seizures and a fever from severe kidney stones that he was suffering in prison. And despite having a do not resuscitate order that was confirmed by the hospital, Schreiber was given intravenous resuscitation and his heart was restarted 5 different times during his treatment at the University of Iowa. He eventually fully recovered with the help of doctors and returned to the state penitentiary, where, this is where the story turns, once he was fully recovered, Schreiber then filed for post-conviction relief, which is a motion basically saying he's wrongfully imprisoned. And his argument was he died. In fact, he died 5 times. and was resuscitated, so he has served his life sentence. The state moved to dismiss the case, and the district court agreed, noting the petitioner's filing of these proceedings in itself confirms his status as living. But it doesn't stop there. Hard to argue with that reasoning, but he's undeterred, and Schreiber appealed to the Iowa Court of Appeals, which heard the appeal. And at that stage, Schreiber, again arguing that he had already died, said, "Hey, I was not sentenced to life plus 1 day. I was just sentenced to life, and I actually died. So my due process rights are being violated." Well, Judge Amanda Potterfield of the Iowa Court of Appeals, in my opinion, putting way too much serious analysis into this decision, noted that under the statute, Schreiber was sentenced to prison for the rest of his natural life. That's what the law actually says, no matter how that life is affected by medical procedures, the judge wrote. Then she authored a sentence that I think perfectly sums up Rotary law and disorder from the entire year. Schreiber is either alive, in which case he must remain in prison, or he's dead, in which case this appeal is moot. The case was dismissed. Schreiber later died of natural causes in 2021 in prison. So that is Rotary law and disorder for today. I do want someone to try this with an insurance company, so please hire me. I want to make that argument that if you are resuscitated, you can get your life insurance. Anyway, Judy McCoy Davis will now introduce our keynote speaker for today. Judy.
You know, over the years, I've had the honor of introducing a number of speakers to you, my fellow Rotarians. And periodically, Kitty will send out a little, very nice message to those of us doing introductions to remind us to keep it short, to not steal the speech. You know, don't give the speech, you're not the speaker, you're the introducer. And it's not about you kind of thing. Well, today I'm going to go a little off track, and I told Kitty ahead of time. But it's not going to be about me. It's really because the organization that we'll be talking about today was founded by my husband. So, the Wayback Machine, for some of you who, looking around the group, will remember this. Some of you probably weren't even born then. But if you go back to 1997, my husband was president of the chamber, Arthur Davis. And he looked ahead and saw that 20 years ahead was the year 2000. And he thought, we need to prepare for that. And he formed what was called the Metro 2000 Committee, which was to be a group of young people in the community. He wanted no one who was over 45 to be on the committee, because he said, we often think of leaders and they're all starting to learn to lead in their 50s and 60s, and he thought that's way too old. So he wanted this committee to look at what were going to be the problems in the year 2000, and how can this group prepare to be the leaders and to help others be the leaders at that time. When he formed the committee, I just shared with Amy, I found in a file I had at home I was going through to give her some papers, and one was a letter to the then executive director of the chamber, which said there were to be 20 members. 10 were going to come from the biggest firms in this city, in the metro, and 10 were going to be appointed by Arthur. Well, the committee grew to be 44 members. And I think about that because what he started has grown and grown, and he had no idea what it would become. But it eventually became the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute. It was run under the chamber for a number of years. And then they finally got smart and decided they should have their own executive director, and hired Amy Jennings for that position back in 2012. So let me tell you about Amy. Amy was born in Granger, so she's from this metro area. She grew up here. She went to Iowa State. She then went on to get her degree from Drake, if I wonderful is she got her undergraduate at Iowa State. She got her master's in Drake in adult learning and organizational performance with an emphasis on leadership. And she took that job to become the head of this group, and it just took off, and it's been great ever since. It was great before, but not as great. This, in 2017, she received the Association of Leadership Programs honor most prestigious award, which is called the Preceptor Award. And here's how they describe it. It's to recognize a leadership program staff member who has gone above and beyond, who has achieved a new standard of excellence, and who demonstrates civic and community engagement. And I think that's a perfect description of our speaker today, Amy Jennings.
I could not ask to have a better person introduce me, and so thank you so much, Judy. She has been a mentor of mine over the years, and we've had such a close relationship, so that meant a lot. Okay, so you already heard one of these, but these numbers up here are things I'm curious whether you know. So, anybody want to guess on 1982 after what Judy just mentioned? First class and when the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute started. So 1979 was when that group of young leaders were pulled together by A. Arthur Davis. They took a couple years to figure out what they wanted to do, and they ultimately decided that young leaders should be pulled together to learn together, and how I say it, and I think Arthur would have said it, learn together, dream together, and then act together. And so that's what started happening in 1982. How about 3,000? Anyone want to guess what 3,000 means to us?
Graduates?
Graduates, yes. 3,000 plus people have gone through Lead DSM programs in the past, we're getting close to 45 years. So that's how many people, and I want to ask, how many graduates do we have in the room today? Yep, that's what I figured. We would have a lot of you. Thank you to all of you for your allegiance to the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute program and to Lead DSM and to everything that you've done for the community. How about 286? That's a hard one. That is the number of organizations that when we surveyed our members, they were involved in leadership roles. And I actually think that is very, very low. That's just the people who responded to our survey. But if you think about all the community organizations in Greater Des Moines, and we have people in leadership roles in 286, that is a pretty significant impact that our graduates are having. And I'm guessing a lot of you in the room might know Bob Riley. Does that name sound familiar? Yeah. So Bob has been a champion of ours, an investor in our programs for many, many years, and he does a great job of having his grandkids figure out what they want to give to, right? He has this whole process of the kids giving money to different things that they care about. And he said, Amy, here's the list. Here's the list of all of the organizations that my grandkids think are important. Can you connect these organizations to Lead DSM? I'm like, okay, this is going to be a good challenge. Every local organization that was on the list, so there were probably 12 or 13 total, and there were about 10 local organizations. Every local organization had either a person in a leadership role, professionally in a leadership role, or a board member. And that's just a very small sample size of the kind of impact that our graduates have in Greater Des Moines. So let's talk a little bit about our vision. So the vision of Lead DSM is a thriving community for all served by an endless source of civic stewards. And there are a couple words in there that I think are especially important to what we do. And that are the two smallest words, which is for all. Because we feel like if we don't equip people to think about everybody in our community thriving, then we're not doing a good job. And so the for all is especially important in our vision. And then also, as Arthur's vision was for Lead DSM, the endless source of civic stewards. We want people who are stewards, meaning caretakers, for Greater Des Moines, and we need a lot of those to make our community successful. Okay, so how many of you are like, is it the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute? Is it Lead DSM? What is it now? Anybody been confused by our name change over the years?
Talk to you about it.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, so the very first program, which is what started our organization in 1982, was called the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute. And then over the years, our leaders added more things under our umbrella. So then it was like, is the Leadership Institute the organization or is it the program? And there was a lot of confusion in our community about that. And so in 2002, which was when we celebrated our 40th anniversary, we decided that we needed an umbrella over all of our programs to try to better brand us and to eliminate some of our confusion. So in 2002, we became Lead DSM, and then the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute kind of returned or was positioned in the spot that really everybody in the community thought it already was, which is a program. And then we have Community Connect, the Youth Leadership Initiative, and more, which I will talk about all those things. But as Judy mentioned, we are an independent 501c3, and we've been an independent 501c3 since 2006. So about 20 years, we have been an independent nonprofit and a growing independent nonprofit, adding these programs over the years. So let's talk about our programs. So the first program I'll talk about is probably the one that most of you are familiar with, and that's the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute. What is the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute? Well, it helps people who already have some level of community engagement to take that to the next level. So I like to say it's those folks who are raising their hands even higher to be active in leading Greater Des Moines toward the future. And that program is 9 months, and there are 3 main pieces to it. One, we teach people about the community, because we feel like people need to understand how are all these issues in our community connected, how are these organizations working together, and where are there opportunities for us to do better. And then we feel like, okay, if you understand that, you need to learn how to lead within those. You need more understanding of what it takes to move our community forward. So leadership is the second thing that happens there. And then third is creativity for change. And so if any of you are used to how our projects used to work in the past, it's a little different now. We are teaching creativity for change as the biggest piece of what our class projects accomplish. So people are leading, knowing our community, more leadership skills, and understanding creativity for change. And what we hear the most often with that program is, at the end, I think and do things differently. And that's what we want, I think, for our leaders in the community, is to think and do things differently. Next, we have our Community Connect program, which I think is so amazing, and we want more people to learn about it. We are not aware of any other programs across the country that are like this, and so we're pretty proud of that. The Community Connect program helps people connect their purpose to service in the community. So it's a very introspective program. You understand, what do I care about? What do I value? How might I want to use my time to make the community better? And at the end, the individuals are connected with different nonprofit organizations where they then go on to serve on committees, on boards of directors. But the most important thing is, it's the things they care about. And we think that's really important. The other cool thing about that program is we have mentors who walk alongside the program participants. So they're people just like you who are saying, you know what, you can learn from where I've been. let me connect you to this executive director that I know of that is within the area of interest that you have. So those mentors are critical to the success of this program. And I think when people leave that program, the thing they often say is, I am more confident about my path. They're not kind of like trying to figure out who they're going to volunteer with or saying yes to everything. I'm sure everybody in this room has had times when they've done that, right? We feel like it's really important for people to use their purpose to serve our community. And then the Youth Leadership Initiative. So this is for high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So it's those future leaders for our community. And they are understanding, similarly to the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute, issues in our community and how they can use their voice to help within those issues. And what happens as part of that is a lot of confidence building. And I would say that's probably the thing, other than understanding more about our community and how they can lead within it, it takes confidence to lead within the community, especially if you're a teenager. And so I have a special story that I wanted to share about this program in particular. This girl here, her name's Kyra, and she is okay with me sharing her story. She joined the Youth Leadership Initiative, and she talked like this with her head down, right? So she had not a lot of confidence when she first joined the program. We could not hear her. People were constantly saying, what? What did you say, Kyra? We couldn't hear you. And her head was down. We found out that she was taking care of her sister who was just diagnosed with epilepsy, and so she was staying up every night to make sure that her sister was safe. She often had trouble getting to the class, and so you can kind of understand maybe why she was struggling with her confidence. But the thing that I learned about Kyra is, even though I could barely hear what she was saying was important. And what she was saying was so smart. And I would often say, speak up. Let people hear your voice, because what you're saying is worth hearing. And then at the end of the program, she was holding her head higher, and she raised her hand and said, I would like to be a peer mentor for this program, which is when you come back the next year and you're one of 8 individuals who gets to help lead the class the next year. And then at our graduation in May this year, she confidently said, Amy, I am graduating, and her head was held high, and she was so excited to have completed her senior year and to go on to whatever was next for her. And there are a lot of young Kyras who go through our Youth Leadership Initiative and have similar stories, right? And so, and I think with all of our programs, even the adults who seem to have all of their stuff together, they have transformational moments in our programs too. And that's exactly what we want to have happen, is that people feel different at the end of the time that they spend in our programs, and they are going on to serve their companies, to serve nonprofits, to serve in government entities, in public service, and they are leading better because of their experience in any LEAD DSM program. And I will then talk about the and more. So this is one thing that's really been growing in the past few years. So we know that we can take about 125 or 130 people between all 3 of our programs every year. And people would come to me, often leaders, CEOs of companies, and say, Amy, I have so many more people that I would like to have participate. I wish you could take everybody. Well, I also wish I could take everybody, but I don't know exactly how we would make that happen, right? And still have a good experience in the program. So I said, what if we start offering more opportunities for people to be able to get leadership development? And so in the past few years, we have started offering quarterly workshops that are available to the community. And those are amazing facilitators from Greater Des Moines who guide people through any number of topics, and they are inexpensive, they're quarterly, and they're 2 hours. And so we're slowly trying to build in more of that kind of opportunity into our organization. And you will probably see some exciting announcements from us that continue to build on that idea, that we can offer more opportunities for people to get leadership development, where you don't have to apply, you don't have to commit to 9 months, because we know there's a desire in our community for people to continue to grow. So please watch for that. I think I'll stop there, because I know there are some alums in the audience. Maybe you have stories to share, or you have questions for me. I gave you very, very high level, knowing that there might be some great questions from the audience. I'll start with Susan, then I'll come up to Steve.
Amy, thanks for your presentation. I'm curious, during the time you've been with the organization since 2012, what are some leadership trends that you've seen changing, not just the program, but the program?
Yeah, leadership trends is what Susan was asking about since I've started. One thing I would say that you all won't be surprised about that's fairly recent is people have like 0 attention span. So, and that's not maybe the trend that you were wanting to understand, but for us, that's really important because we've had to understand how to shift our programming pretty significantly to address that. Because for any of you who've been through the programs, it used to be a day of sitting, right? Like you would have speakers come in, you would be there for, you know, a lot of hours listening to people. And we have found that we have to keep things much more, I don't want to say entertaining, but, you know, engaging. And that also, though, affects, I think, people's ability to lead, right? Like, people are always moving on to the next thing, and we can't keep track of our email and our text messages and our social media and everything. And I think sometimes that affects our ability to look forward as well, because there's so many things that are asking for our attention. And in order for us to be strategic, like Arthur Davis was in 1979, we have to pause. And I think there's not as much pausing and having conversations about what our future looks like when we're so focused on all the frenzy of what's in front of us. So that would be one thing that I've definitely experienced and seen. I'll go to Steve and then Bob.
Yeah, that spurred another question that I have. In the class today, do you say, okay, you got to put your phone away? You can't use your phone. That's question number one.
Okay, it's a
Question
two-part.
number two,
Okay.
I'm sorry. When I was on the board of the Leadership Institute, we instituted what was called a transformational leadership class. What became of that?